Welcome to the Live Full, Work Fun podcast. This is the show to encourage you to live your life to the fullest and do fun work that fuels your lifestyle. Hi, I'm your host, Gayla Scrivener. Every week, you'll be introduced to amazing guests, useful resources, and inspirational stories. You'll discover opportunities and perspectives to shape your version of living full and working fun. Before we get started with the show, I have a question for you. Are you a busy solopreneur struggling to find the time to consistently post to your social accounts? Well, the Scrivener Solutions team and I are introducing Scrivener Social, the easy-to-use social media scheduling platform paired with all of our workflows. It simplifies the entire posting process, saving you time and boosting your social media marketing efforts. Here's how it works. First, you subscribe to Scrivener Social, choosing the support level that best fits your needs. Second, we have onboarding calls to help you set up your account and give you the guidance for streamlining your posting process. Third, you implement your plan using our workflows to get more out of your social media marketing. Now, you could continue to do it alone, being frustrated and feeling guilty that you never get around to posting to your social accounts for your small business. Or you could save time, energy, and frustration by using an easy-to-use social scheduling platform backed by a support team that helps you streamline the whole process. You deserve a system that makes posting to your social media faster and more efficient. Go to scrivenersocial.com and subscribe today. Now, on to the show. Hi there and welcome. This is the show where we explore topics that help you create your lifestyle to live full and work fun. Joining me today is Evan Cox. For the last 15 years, Evan has served businesses, nonprofits, and leaders who guide them. Today, he has the privilege of serving nonprofits and businesses with clear marketing that supports their mission as a StoryBrand Certified guide. Unfortunately, marketing often gets a bad rap. Evan believes that marketing, when done right, is simply an avenue to create and build more relationships. It's not sleazy tactics, no ambitious metrics. Your audience is counting on you to be a trusted partner that they can rely on. Your marketing efforts exist to support that mission. And I love how Evan frames the relationship building in a marketing lens. I'm excited for you to meet Evan as we talk more about marketing and particularly in the nonprofit sector and how entrepreneurship is really a self-discovery journey. Well, let's hop right into our conversation, shall we? Evan, thank you so much for being here today and being a guest on today's show.
I'm happy to do it. Thanks so much for the invite. It's great to be here.
Well, we had met several months ago. Well, I don't even know if we met in person, but we are both StoryBrand Certified guides. And we went to a summit. And after the summit, we wanted to connect. And we had been talking before we hit record, and it is such a delight to have you. I'm super excited. And I would love for you to start out our conversation to tell us a little bit about yourself.
I appreciate that. So yeah, I am a StoryBrand Certified guide. It's a generous, fantastic community. It's been a really helpful element. My business, I know that it's been the same way for you. And what I really do is use marketing as a key tool to build relationships for my clients. I service both nonprofit and for-profit entities, and I realize that there's a common thread for both of those organizations. They want to reach more people for whatever their mission is, and they want to find out how can I make sure that marketing isn't sleazy or confusing or all these tools, what do I do with them? So I simply use marketing as a tactic to build new relationships. That's all marketing is. And then you can reach more people as a result of starting and building those relationships.
I love that. Now, Evan, have you always been a marketer?
That is a great question. No, I started in the nonprofit space, and anybody who's worked or connected to a nonprofit role knows that you have your job description of things that are outlined for you to do, and then all of the other things that never make it to a job description that you're also responsible for. So I spent 15 years working for a large international nonprofit here in St. Louis and sat at every seat at the table minus finance. That means that I had a role in outreach and operation and security and marketing and fundraising. And I saw from that lens and vantage point how all of those industry organizational elements need to work together to move your mission forward. And I came at it from the lens of a project manager. And so as I was handed a new role or responsibility, it was either how do I equip the team to do this work, or if no one's doing this work, how do I find out what needs to be done and then build out the team from there. And so when it comes to marketing and the fundraising component, those were two areas that once I dove in to understand and learn what was required and needed, not only did I enjoy it, but that became a focal point that I carried with me over 15 years. So that was the genesis for me now, wanting to offer that same sort of learning experience to all of my clients.
So what was that bridge that you were with the nonprofit for 15 years and now you have your consulting firm?
Great question. So for me, it was a process of saying, okay, I love what I'm doing here in that role for nonprofit. I'm also seeing transferable skills to be able to help take those experiences. And again, it's a larger nonprofit. Those best practices apply, but how you execute them look different. So I was saying, ooh, we might be operating at scale here, but that best practice could actually be used for a grassroots nonprofit that is trying to achieve $100,000 in donations for a year, not seven figures, right? The transferable skills allowed me to launch my consulting operation and then scale that over time. And was just really blessed with the impact we were having. Took that full time, and I love it. It's fantastic.
Do I understand you right that you eased into, or you had your consulting, you started your consulting firm and then gathered clients and then were able to hit it full time?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And there's a variety of ways to do it. It is okay to have a definitive start and stop date. I'm not opposed to that, but there's benefits and drawbacks to both. And so for me as an entrepreneur, it was like getting my sea legs and figuring out, do I like this setup? Do I like this approach? Do I like the style of my product and offering? Is there product market fit? Like all the stuff that we work through as entrepreneurs, I was able to do that gradually and not put so much stress on me and or the business to fulfill all of those things when it felt like, oh my gosh, it's do or die. Like there was a safety net underneath me, and that was huge, really helpful.
When I was working in the corporate world and thinking of the idea, and maybe this is just weird of me, I was reluctant to start something on my own because I felt like I was cheating on on my employer. That's probably a mindset that's just nobody else has but me, I'm sure.
No, I don't think so. I think there's a variety of things that can hold you back. It could be what you talked about, right? Maybe giving my all to my job looks like not having somebody else as a side gig. It could be, do I have what it takes? That imposter syndrome, inferiority complex of like, okay, well, do I really have enough to offer to make it valuable? But there's a variety of things that could come into play there. But I am convinced, based on my journey, that one of the most helpful things you can ever do in your career journey is to have some sort of side gig or side hustle where you operate as a business owner. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to compete with your day job, quote unquote. It could be that you launch a travel business if that is not connected to what you like. You determine where that is and what that looks like. But the reason for it is I gained an owner's mindset and mentality that I didn't have before. And so, as we know, it's feast or famine as an entrepreneur and business owner. Like the buck stops with you, or if things don't get done, like you're the one holding the cards and like, okay, it's me. Like I'm the problem, right? Having that ownership mentality and then transferring it to whatever that other role is allows you to take on more responsibility and ownership and move projects forward or accomplish more because you're approaching it from different. It's not just the, ooh, I've clocked out because I'm done. You still want boundaries, but it's like, ooh, if my job is marketing, but the ultimate goal is that we hit this revenue mark, what else do I need to make sure we do to hit that goal? And oh my gosh, it skyrockets your expertise, your experience, and sometimes even your position within that 9 to 5 or corporate role.
I love that. And that might have been a history of some not so supportive bosses in my journey, at least. And our listeners might have that type of experience as well. Was your employer supportive of what your side gig was, or did they even know?
That is a great question. So everybody's going to have a different application of this principle. So I don't think it's like a straightforward, always do this, because I've talked to folks who had to build in secret because nobody was going to approve. Sometimes there's even like non-competes and there's like some legal pieces to that, right? So that's a whole different element. For me, I had supportive leaders who were either doing something similar or understood the value in that. And it was a two-way street. It was them being accepting and open of that role, and then me being open enough to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm opening myself up to input from you. If you ever see something that feels like it's out of balance, if I'm slipping in my responsibilities, we should probably have a conversation if you're seeing something that I'm not seeing. So having that open communication, if there's some healthy dynamics there, is a great spot, because you're right. Oftentimes folks want to start a side gig to launch and get out of wherever they're at. And if a manager or boss or leader sees that, there can be some hesitancy to support that. So I don't know that everybody will have the same end result as what I did, but walking through like, how can I with best intention give them insight and input to what's happening, I think was helpful for me, and that is probably applicable in some form or fashion for a lot of us.
Oh, thank you for that, Evan. I think that it's really wonderful, the perspective that you just gave, because what I heard from that is like, you may not have the support, but you can find the support in other places and do it in a professional manner. And having the side gig makes you a better employee, having that owner mindset. And I think that's really, really great. Thank you for that. Now, what makes work fun for you?
Ooh, here's what makes work fun and challenging all at the same time. I am convinced now more than ever before that entrepreneurship is not what we think it is, especially when you're just getting started. Entrepreneurship, at least from my vantage point, is everybody thinks being an entrepreneur is being a small business owner and I'm going to build something incredible. And that may be the outcome. But I found that really the greatest discoveries and challenges and exciting pieces of being an entrepreneur is all of the self-discoveries that I like stumble upon about myself. It could be previous experience or history. You talk about that, right? Like your shape and early form and fashion from being maybe your earliest career positions, right? How that actually informs how you're going to operate, good, bad, or indifferent as an entrepreneur, your personality, your tendencies, your leadership styles, all of those things. I continually, every single day, am finding things out about myself that I'm like, ooh, it's really like I've gift wrapped self-discovery and put it under the guise of building a business. And I think that is both challenging, you have to be open to that, and that's most exciting. Because we're in a similar space, right? I do marketing and fundraising for my clients. The reality is marketing and fundraising is the smallest component of what I actually do for my clients. It's what our category is, it's our business. But the reality is everything boils down to human psychology. Everything from maybe getting clients what they want and what they need, dissecting what they're saying and saying, ooh, I think you're right. You might need a website, but you also want a website that does this, and this. Or it might be in a moment saying, okay, this was intended to be a marketing kickoff call. We've shifted into business therapy because you no longer want to do this. I had that in a kickoff call. They were super excited. And then when the week span happened from saying yes to kickoff call, in that kickoff call, he was like, I just don't know if I'm going to do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, hard pivot, right? Ross from Brent, hard pivot. We are now going into, okay, what is your purpose? What is your why? And that is a piece for me that is an integral part of what I do. It's not just giving an automation or workflow on a website. It's walking through what does that look like to help my clients become better versions of themselves.
You and I are both run small offices, and we pour a lot. We pour a lot of ourselves into our clients. And I don't know about you, but I love the fact that small businesses helping other small businesses. And I don't want to be a really big firm or big company, because I lose that personal touch, I guess you could say. And I like working with other small businesses. I mean, we all have our preferences, but it's very satisfying having that. What did you call it? Business therapy, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of marketing that's, again, disguised as business therapy.
Yes.
I end up being a therapist a lot more than I end up being a marketer in some of those conversations.
Right. I can relate. How about at the very beginning of our conversation, you talked about marketing as a means of relationship building. And that is what really resonates. That statement really resonates with me, because so many people think of sales and marketing as something that it really isn't. In my mind, it boils down to, how do we bridge a relationship? How do we nurture a relationship? How do we help more people? Can you speak more into that?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't have all the answers figured out. Every single sales call, I have notes where I'm like, oh, I love this, or I've never thought of this, or I would do this again, or I wouldn't do it again. I think a lot of folks in the nonprofit space, I've actually got a couple of clients right now where we shifted the word marketing to communications, or we shifted the word from marketing to strategic plan. We found out what words were helpful for them, because the format or the exercise might be similar, but there's certain words that bring about connotations that they weren't comfortable with. I work with a lot of folks in the faith-based space. And so there's questions about, okay, like if I'm a faith-based organization or nonprofit, is marketing something that we should even be doing? It feels too corporate, and for the for-profit, is it applicable to us? And the reality is, talking about things as a tactic or a system or a campaign brief or creative kickoff can feel divorced from the intention of what you want when you run a nonprofit or even a small business, especially if it's blue collar or solopreneur, or you're deep in the weeds and providing a service. The reality is, every single business or nonprofit wants to have more relationships in the Rolodex, and they want to be able to reach more people. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. I view marketing as my avenue to help my clients and my audience do both of those things: start more relationships and reach more people.
Nice. And why do words matter? I mean,
I think words matter a lot. Everything from like messaging and copywriting, which we both, espouse and believing in the StoryBrand framework of putting our audience member as the hero or somebody that we should focus on. I think words matter because for us, words have lots of nuance, right? All of the things that you say and communicate have nuance. And if you don't put intentionality into the words you're using, and if you don't transport or teleport yourself into the shoes of the end recipient of those words, what you try to say might not often be what they receive. And I want to make sure that I am giving things to folks who need them in a way that they can best receive them and make sure it's a fit. Sales isn't just about finding a way or a hook to get leverage and get them to say yes, at least not in my estimation. For me, sales is always about making sure that there's mutual benefit, an exchange of benefit, and educating whoever that is through the process of saying, hey, if you go down this road and you take this step or this step, usually the outcome is going to look like this or this. It's me educating and saying, hey, what you said you wanted is going to happen if we take this approach. Does that sound like what you want? And giving them the opportunity to say yes, that did, or no. If it's not, then it's me saying on every sales call, okay, if there's someone in my network who's a better fit, personality-wise or service, I want to try to make that connection for you. Being an advocate for your audience I think is often a lost art. We talk about being a guide in the StoryBrand framework, and I fully believe and endorse that model. But I think we can almost take it up a notch if we become advocates, because a guide is showing direction. An advocate is actively acting in their best interest on their behalf. And I want to try to be an advocate for everybody that's in.
And working with small business owners, working with nonprofits in the marketing sense, I know that with the nonprofit consultants that I work with, the word donor stewardship comes about. And it's like, well, it's all in the way that you talk, how you talk with in a consistent basis for nurturing the relationships that you have, nurturing the donors or the customers or whatever. But as you work with your clients and using the StoryBrand framework, using your expertise in helping guide them in their communications, are they able to learn from you to write better, to communicate better? For, I can imagine that you're coaching them in a way and consulting them, guiding them in the cadence or the way to talk, the way to be clear in their communication. Because there's a lot of folks that it's like, if I ask for a donation or if I ask for the sale, I feel kind of weird about that, But when you're genuinely helping someone and explaining exactly what this is, and then if this is right for you, then you will either donate or you would pay for the service and things like that. Do your clients get to learn from you, and do you give them scripts? I mean, how do you work with them?
Ooh, there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind there. Number one, yes, whether it is doing something for clients or with clients, either way, the ultimate outcome is that I don't want to be, and I'm going to steal from David C. Baker, so it's not my idea. I want to steal this idea from him that says, I want to be a liberating force, not an occupying force. And so for me, with all of my clients, I've really tried to embody this idea of, I want to empower you to maybe no longer need me if it's a specific scope and style and they have an interest in eventually doing copywriting. Or it could be that we have an ongoing engagement for a number of years, but we have specific moments where we check in and say, hey, is this still working for you? Versus saying, you are now like handcuffed to me forever for eternity, right? Nobody wants that. You want to be a liberating and occupying force. When it comes to nonprofits, though, I often find that it's a little easier for business owners to see a connection between sales and marketing. There's a variety of ways that you could approach that, but when it comes to nonprofits, I think too many executive directors and leaders accidentally fall into this trap of thinking that fundraising is a necessary evil, right? How many times have I been in a conversation, you might have heard this before too, where someone's like, we have a new program. Okay, who can we find to raise that $100,000 from? Or we need $10,000 to meet budget so that we can accomplish this goal. And while that may be well intended, fundraising is way more than a necessary evil. The reality is a nonprofit has more than one audience. And I always start with messaging and audiences saying, okay, your nonprofit is not one group. You have an outreach audience that you serve. You might have donors and volunteers. You might have a variety of folks. The reality is, if you only focus on your outreach audience, so let's say that you're a clean water initiative and the folks in India are receiving clean water and they're your outreach audience. They might be the focal point for why you started that nonprofit, and you're wanting to see them transform from I don't have clean water to I have clean water and all the benefits of that. But if you think through the lens of fundraising and as a necessary evil to get to that point, then you're missing a magnificent opportunity to also take a group of donors on a similar but different transformative process. A donor who doesn't have meaning in their life to a donor who's seeing a different level of fulfillment, or a donor who cares about your cause but is not sure who to trust to get involved, and now they have complete peace of mind that they're working with you to accomplish that goal. So many executive directors that I work with accidentally fall into the trap of, I request money so that we can do more of the work, and I hope I don't turn them off or ask for too much from them. And the reality is when you use that relational model, it's building relational equity with people who are on a shared journey with you and want to see that same mission accomplished. And you're helping that outreach audience transform at the same time that you're helping that donor audience transform. I used to be responsible for a caseload of about 500 donors, and majority of my conversations did not start and end with money. It was peppered in there occasionally in the right moment, but it was usually for this faith-based nonprofit, finding out that something really terrible was happening in their person and offering a moment to pray and reflect with them. Or donors who would usually give to disaster relief would call me up and say, hey, we're actually in the midst of a fire in California. And me sending a handwritten note saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. How are your horses? Like in that case, they had horses. And so we were really concerned, like, will the horses make it through the fire? It's the relational component that drives bigger impact. And I think that's what nonprofits meant. And on the small business side, there's a lot of applicable scenarios there too.
Thank you, Evan, for that insight. It boils down for humans talking to humans.
Yeah, it really does.
And I love that. Now, as you have been on your entrepreneurial journey, would you have done anything differently looking back?
Yeah, I would have done a lot of things differently. The first few that come to mind, and I actually wrote them down because we were talking about this. I think the first thing is I would shift from a good, bad mentality to a what would I love to do more of and what would I like to do less of. Either one, entrepreneurs are really bad a lot of times at debriefing after a project or a campaign or whatever it is that we're working on because we're on to the next thing, right? And so it's intentionally setting aside time to think through what did I like or what did I not like, but then taking it another level and not making it so good and bad focus because it's easy to say like, ooh, that went terrible, that was bad. And instead shifting the mentality to say, you know what, next time I would love to do more of this because that seemed to really resonate and work well. And it did not work well when I demanded all of the money up front and I'd never done this project. Okay, I'm going to do less of that next time. I think finding a way to always be forward focused is a really hard thing as an entrepreneur without assigning blame of good or bad. Yeah, we need to take ownership, but how can I think of, I want to do more of this and less of this, and always be learning from every single engagement and applying those learnings to the next one. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure that we could probably talk about a dozen others too, but that's the first thing that comes.
I love that perspective and a mindset shift because so many of us just think good or bad and it's black or white. But I love how that advice in shifting our mindset for what do we want more of? What do we want less of? And learn from the experience. That is very valuable. Evan, I would love for you to share a resource or a book that has made a significant difference in your life, either personally or professionally, something that stands out the most.
That's a great question. So from a professional standpoint, it would be a book that you and I both love, Building a Story Brand, which is the genesis for me getting certified as a guide and really walking through the process of applying a proven story-based framework to everything that we do, marketing, fundraising, and everything in between. Whether you read or listen to that book, what I love about it is that it's professional enough that I'm going to get a win as an entrepreneur, and it's personally applicable enough to me that, like, for example, if you follow that framework, my wife doesn't love this, but when we go on a vacation, I am story branding my vacation because I'm like, okay, who is the audience? What's the problem? What's the outcome? I'm thinking through all the ways to apply something personally and professionally. On the personal front, there's a number of books that come to mind. Recent reads. In the last couple of years, I've really tried to up my money psychology game. As an entrepreneur, the reality is the amount of money we make may change, or the size of the scope or the bid may change, but it's very rare for us to actually pause and say, is my view of money that I've had since X date still serving me well? And so I found out that it wasn't like a terrible upbringing as a child, maybe have a bad view of money, but I had an inaccurate view of money during certain seasons of being an entrepreneur for where my business was at. And my business was requiring me to have a different view of money so that I could factor in all the things my business needed to succeed in the next step. So I will teach you to be rich and a simple path to wealth are two books. Actually, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Those are three books in that category that over the last few years, I've really gone deep there to make sure that all of the ways I'm viewing the world are still helpful for where my business is going. So that's the first one. Along Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson, if you're a person of faith, is really helpful for me from a personal standpoint. That's been really helpful. And then from a business standpoint, anything by Mike McCallowitz. I don't know. Do you know Mike? He was at one of the events.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that is like Profit First or the Pumpkin Plan, he is like the quintessential. How do I make sure I get out of a poverty mindset as an entrepreneur? That's like operating, that is money, that is team. And I'm like, oh, anything by Mike McCallowitz is gold.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And thank you for that, Evan. I too I'm studying the mindset of money because I had a good friend of mine, fellow entrepreneurs, like, well, I'm just not good at money and this, that, and the other. And I said, you have to change how you say this. It's like, I just need to educate myself about money and grow to the level in our business that we need to. And those resources that you mentioned, I'll have in the show notes as well. As well as you have some resources on your own website. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Oh, I do. Yeah. So if you go to evancoxconsulting.com/resources, there's a number of free like guides and blueprints that can be helpful for a small business owner or a nonprofit. When it comes to building a website or a sales funnel, it's a really imposing idea for a lot of small business owners. Like there's a technical component, there's a time component. And so I have a free homepage template that is story based that I used to offer as a paid product. And now I give away for free. And so if anybody wants to like DIY or get started with their website, that is a perfect place to get started. And then I can actually take that template and build out a website if someone wants help with it. And there's also a couple of sales funnel resources on there. On the nonprofit side, I realized that too many folks did not have a game plan for how to get to where they wanted to go with their fundraising and marketing too. But from a fundraising perspective, someone might say, like, I feel like in order to reach our budget this year, it needs to be $132,000 raised. And then it stopped there. And they didn't have a game plan. There was no outline of how many donors they have or how many donors they need to engage. Like there was not a plan. And so I took all of the things that I've learned and experienced. And then one of my team members, John DeLang as well, we worked together, we partnered, and we created a strategic fundraising plan template for nonprofit. So it is a complete template with video tutorials that you can use on your own. Or if you want to level up and get coaching or have us do a custom version of that, we can do those things as well. So all of those are listed in there because I'm like, I did not have that as a grassroots nonprofit fundraiser. And almost everybody that I talk to as an executive director is like, great, I know how much, but how do I get there? This is a proven plan to help folks understand and unpack with me.
That is fantastic, Evan. I'm super excited. I'll have that in the show notes as well. And how do we stay in contact with you? How do we follow you?
Great question. So we've talked about a lot of different social media platforms and channels because there are lots of them. I have intentionally focused on LinkedIn as my platform of choice. Now, again, you can reach me through my website as well if you want to like schedule a consultation or just connect. But for me, LinkedIn is where I find most of my audience hangs out and where I can probably add the most value at this juncture. So find me on LinkedIn, Evan Cox or Evan Cox Consulting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Evan, for being here. I have learned so much from you, and I can't wait to be able to connect again because I know that in the StoryBrand community, we're going to be rubbing shoulders.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the invite. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to hear the responses from anybody who's listening.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks for joining me today. You'll find the links in the show notes to connect with Evan and to get the resources that he mentioned. But let's continue the conversation, shall we? Hop over to Facebook and post what your biggest takeaway from today's show was in the Live Full Work Fun group. Well, thanks for listening. Until next time, have a fantastic week. Live full, work fun. This episode has been brought to you by Scrivener Social, the easy-to-use social scheduling platform built for the busy solopreneur. You deserve a system that makes posting to your social media faster and more efficient. Go to scrivenersocial.com and subscribe today.